On November 16, 2009, the 37-year-old tax advisor Sergei Magnitsky died in Moscow, Russia, in the Metrovskaya Tishina prison after 11 months of detention. He was held there for 358 days without a trial on charges of tax evasion. In jail, Magnitsky was denied medical care while developing gallstones, a blocked gallbladder, and pancreatitis. The Kremlin's own Human Rights Council said there was evidence suggesting Magnitsky was beaten to death.
Magnitsky was a tax advisor at Hermitage Capital, global investment company that was based in Russia back in the day and owned by the American Bill Browder. The company was accused of tax evasion and tax fraud by the Russian authorities, but Sergei Magnitsky had a different story to tell. He uncovered massive fraud and money laundering schemes while serving as auditor of the Hermitage case. His testimony implicated police, the judiciary, tax officials, bankers, and the Russian mafia. As a response, Russian authorities opened a case against Sergei Magnitsky himself. I first learned about the story of Sergei Magnitsky in the small lecture room of the Johns Hopkins University in Washington. Bill Browder, who was himself expelled from Russia, vowed to make everything possible to shed light on the story of Sergei's suffering and death in prison.
While I am greatly at risk, I'm not backing down. I'm walking with my head held high. I'm going after Putin and his regime for the crimes they've committed, and I'm not going to stop.
I invited Browder for an interview. It was one of the first media appearances he did in Washington. It was the first time when the Russian-speaking audience was hearing about the case of Sergei Magnitsky. In our first interview, Browder said that he wanted to escalate the story so that those responsible for the death of Sergei Magnitsky pay a real price.
And I'm here today to tell the story, to clarify any of the details.
Bill Browder became a frequent visitor to Washington, communicating his message to those who had leverage to make justice prevail. On every visit, I would interview Browder on the progress. Subsequently, a number of U.S. legislators got involved. They too were shocked by the brutality of the system that killed Sergei Magnitsky. Senators Ben Cardin and John McCain pioneered the bipartisan effort to advocate for justice. We made their voices heard in Russia.
Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
In late 2012, the Magnitsky Act was passed by the U.S. Congress and signed into law by President Obama. It was intended to punish Russian officials responsible for the death of Magnitsky. The act gives U.S. authorities the power to freeze bank accounts and ban individuals from entering the country.
Действие закона Магнитского постоянно интерпретируется российскими государственными медиа как атака на Россию против российского общества. Наша задача рассказывать во всей полноте о том, как работает механизм закона Магнитского. Мы являемся прямым источником информации о том, как на самом деле и против кого на самом деле задействован закон Магнитского.
We told our Russian audience that the world is watching and ready to interfere on behalf of those who perish but remain unbroken by the system. Unbroken is the word that Magnitsky's mother Natalia uses to describe her son. Throughout his imprisonment, Sergei was sending letters she showed me on our first meeting in Washington.
On December 23, 2016, the United States passed the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act, which authorizes the U.S. President to impose economic sanctions on human rights abusers and corrupt government officials anywhere in the world.
By noticing the story of one person's plight and another person's struggle for justice, we fulfilled one more important mission. In the country where corruption is rampant and abuse in prisons is taken for granted, we told our audience that things can and should be different. Abusers should be prosecuted and wrongdoings exposed.
Since the inception of the Global Magnitsky Program, more than 250 individuals and entities from 36 countries have been designated for involvement in corruption or serious human rights abuses, and that includes Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov, who was sanctioned by the United States, and also individuals connected to the 2018 murder of Saudi Arabian journalist Jamal Khashoggi and many others.